Welcome to another episode of Incredible Teams, the show that explores the world's best teams, the tactics that got them there, and how you can use some of them to apply to your own. This is your host, Liam Hurd, and today we have another special interview episode. Now, this is a format that I think I'm going to try and keep going with. Kind of works like this, a couple of episodes or one episode on the team itself, and then an interview episode, like someone who played on it, coached the team, or some sort of expert on the team. And today we have someone who fits into that last category, Ira Miller, who I've mentioned a couple times on the previous episodes. He was the main beat writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, covering the 49ers throughout all 5 of their Super Bowls. He was essentially an insider for the team, and he was actually one of only 2 journalists that Bill Walsh fully trusted. It's a fascinating conversation, and I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed talking to him. Well, I thought we could start with a bit of a nod to our mutual friend Mark Reason. He mentioned to me that you have an amazing talent in picking the right Super Bowl winner every year. At a very
I did when I needed to, yeah.
How are you so good at that? Like, what are you looking for in each team as you pick?
Well, you just sort of look at the keys, quarterback and defenses. You know, a team with a better quarterback and a better defense is going to win most games.
That's a pretty simple answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, we all try to make it a lot more complicated than it is. But that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it must have been somewhat easy sometimes when you have Joe Montana and one of the best defenses with the 49ers to just pick them each time.
Yeah, I can. The one that I don't know that I guess earned me a lot of recognition was in 2001, before the playoffs began. The Rams had the greatest show on turf and all of that. I picked New England to beat them in the Super Bowl, and that was shocking to a lot of people. But I went through a process of elimination of who I liked and who I didn't like, and 25 years later, I can't tell you exactly why I ruled out some teams, but eventually it came down to the Rams and the Patriots, and I just thought that the Rams would be outcoached because they were just so concentrated on their offense. I didn't feel if they were challenged, if they would hold up. And I was never a big fan of Mike Martz.
Okay. That's interesting that it's kind of a pretty simple decision most of the time, other than that time. So
yeah. I mean, as I said, I can't go back now chapter and verse, but there were things about AFC teams I didn't like, and I can't even tell you. I'd have to look up who the teams were, but I just didn't like them, and I just wound up the process of elimination. Wound up with the Patriots.
So where did you grow up, Ira? Are you from the Chicago area? I know that's sort of where you're based now, or are you from out west?
No, I grew up outside in Westchester County, up in New York.
Okay.
Outside New York City.
Nice. And did you play football growing up, or were you involved in sports?
I played golf.
Nice.
Played youth baseball. But no, I didn't play football. Other than when I was at Penn State, the student paper, the Daily Collegian, we had a touch football team that played a few games, and I suffered one semi-debilitating injury when I got run into by. We were playing a touch football game against the Penn State baseball team, and the catcher, who was a big stud, I somehow ran into him, and I couldn't walk for 2 or 3 days. That was the extent of my major sports injury.
Was that from a concussion, or did he just take your leg out?
Just my bruised leg.
Oh, nice.
Calf injury. You can get hurt. You can get hurt playing touch football. I found out.
More hurt than you can playing golf.
Yeah.
Cool. So you got into sports journalism at Penn State. Is that sort of where that sort of passion developed?
Well, no, it developed actually. I was doing it even in high school. I was writing for the local paper as a high school correspondent. It was something that developed very early. I think it was my mother used to tell me. I think it was my first grade teacher started pointing me in that direction. I can't vouch for that because I have no memory of it. But it's something that I started at a very young age.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's what they all say these days. Like, if you can remember what you were into and what you were passionate about when you were a kid, that's probably what you should do as an adult.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, that's good advice. So you finished up at Penn State, and then did you make your way out west? Were you straight to the Chronicle, or?
In increments. I worked in Pittsburgh for 4, 5, 6, about 8 years. And then I worked in New York for 5 years, and then I went to San Francisco.
Nice. And were you covering sports teams in Pittsburgh and New York as well?
Correct. Yeah, I was working for, I started out working for the Associated Press, and I left there and went to work for UPI and in Pittsburgh, and then went to UPI in New York and San Francisco. I'm sorry, I didn't go to UPI in San Francisco. I went from UPI in New York to the Chronicle in San Francisco.
Uh-huh. And I know I know Pittsburgh's not necessarily East Coast, but we'll count it East Coast compared to San Francisco. It must have been a lot different covering the East Coast sides compared to out west.
Yes and no. I mean, Pittsburgh sports fans are not like Philadelphia or Boston sports fans, but they do have some passion. But yeah, it is a little different. There's a lot more interest, deeper interest, I guess, in the East and in the West, and why that is, I don't know that I can explain it other than we've got better weather out west, so people find other things to do. You don't have the passion that you have in the East and Midwest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Montana was from around the Pittsburgh area. Did you know of him when you were working there? I don't know if the timelines lined up, or did you?
No, I left Pittsburgh in '72, and Montana was. I don't even think he started high school then.
Oh, that's funny. That would have been an interesting little link up there, and then later on, yeah. Okay, cool. So,
but he turned out pretty good.
I guess so. Some would say that, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could transition to a little bit of your sort of career, your work at the Niners. I know you and Mr. Bill Walsh sometimes didn't see eye to eye so much. Is that right?
Yeah, we hardly ever saw eye to eye, and really you shouldn't. I mean, you're not a. That's one of the things back in the day when I used to talk to journalism classes at Penn State and young kids. You're not a fan.
Yeah.
You're not rooting for them. And you're definitely not their friend. I mean, you might get a relationship and be able to, be more than civil. But I mean, you can get a good relationship with the people you're covering. But you're not cheering for them. You're not their fan. You're not their supporter. You're and outside. You're just a fly on the wall, I guess. One way of describing it. You're just there to observe, comment, and report.
But I did see some line, and you can't trust everything you see online. So definitely correct me if the
you can't. Oh wait, hang on, I got to write that one down. I didn't know that.
Correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I did read that when Bill announced his retirement, he came straight down off the podium and went straight for you and gave you a big bear hug.
That's mostly correct. It wasn't a bear hug. He put his arm around my shoulder.
Okay. So there was clearly something else there, right? Like you didn't see eye to eye, but he clearly deeply respected you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. He got it. He wasn't happy about a lot of things, but he understood we had different jobs, and after he retired, we really had a good relationship. We played golf from time to time. Bill got it. He just didn't like what he got sometimes, but he did understand, and he was kind of fun to cover because you always had to read between the lines on what he was saying and what he meant and what he wanted to mean.
Yeah, he's cryptic.
Yes.
Well, I think you might have been the key piece out in San Francisco because, they haven't won since you left. But what was your favorite of the 5 Super Bowls that you covered? Like, what was the favorite year you were reporting on?
Without question, that would be the first one because it was just so totally out of the blue, and it never happened before. The town was agog, was all excited, and it was new. It was different. It was so unexpected. It just, even the start of that year, if I remember right, did they lose 2 of the first 3 games or something like that? I have to go look it up, but it was just, it just developed. I mean, there was no other than the fact that they had drafted a bunch of rookie defensive backs who looked really good in training camp and exhibition games. I mean, there was no reason going into that season to think that what eventually happened was actually going to happen. And it just developed week by week. There would be another piece of the story. They'd win a game in a different way. Something strange would happen, something unexpected. And then, of course, there was the biggest highlight of the regular season was when they beat the Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely. What a game.
Yeah. And then, of course, they got to do it again in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, that was the catch, right? In the regular.
That was the catch. Yeah, the game was people probably don't remember this now, but the game was wound up so close. But the 49ers lost 6 turnovers in that game and still won it, which kind of speaks to how talented they were that they could overcome that many mistakes and still win a championship game.
Yeah, I mean, Montana, he threw 3 interceptions, if I'm reading that right, as well.
Yeah, I don't remember the breakdown, interceptions and fumbles, but I just remember it was 6 turnovers.
Yeah, that's crazy. I loved the call from the commentator, something about Clark was 10 feet tall or something like that.
Yeah.
Such a great call. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you were talking about the defensive backs. That was Dwight Hicks and the Hot Licks, right?
Right. Dwight Hicks, Eric Wright, and Carlton Williamson. 3 rookie DBs.
Yeah.
And second year. I'm sorry, not Dwight Hicks. Carlton Williamson, Eric Wright, and Ronnie Lott. Dwight Hicks was, I think, second-year player at that point.
Yeah. And it was such an amazing turnaround from only a couple of years earlier when they were so bad, and then to, burst out and win. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was totally unexpected from a national standpoint. They were not, the previous year they'd been 6-10, and that was considered a successful season. But it just sort of, it happened. It's one of those things that you look back and, well, how did it happen? It just did happen. That's the thing about sports. You don't see that sort of thing very often, but those things do happen.
Absolutely. And then what was the actual game like that year? I remember reading in my research that that was the highest ever like Super Bowl rating based on the Nielsen ratings. It was about 50% of all households with a TV in the US were watching that game. That must have been amazing to be a part of, covering that actual game.
Yeah, I don't remember those numbers. I do remember that it did get a Buffo TV rating that lasted very high for a long time.
Yeah. And then I'm reading here my notes again. About 500,000 people turned out to the victory parade.
Again, I couldn't give you a number, but I know that they were hanging on the lamppost in downtown San Francisco. It was quite a scene, and part of it too. The San Francisco, not only the 49ers had not won, but they were the first quote unquote major league team in the Bay Area. They were there before baseball or basketball.
Yeah,
and so they had the most ingrained fan group, and also the most deprived because they'd waited the longest. But there hadn't been major league sports championships in Northern California.
Yeah, weren't they? I think they were tied with the first major league team west of the Mississippi when they were founded. Pretty sure.
Yeah, that's in the All-American Conference, probably. Yeah.
So during your kind of career at the Niners, you're also president of the Pro Football Writers Association. How did you kind of get into that? What was that like?
Well, in 1990 or 1991, at the annual meeting of the Pro Football Writers, Don Pearson and I were both nominated. Don from the Chicago Tribune were both nominated to be vice president of the Pro Football Writers, and they sent us out of the room like you do in high school, and we were out there a long time because it was a very close vote. I think it was like 1 vote difference, and he was elected vice president. And so when we came back in, they decided, well, we should have a second vice president. So I was elected second vice president, which put me in line to be president of the Pro Football Writers 2 years later.
Cool. So this may be an absolutely stupid question, but like, what did that entail? What kind of, did you have to do any specific like extra work for that?
Well, it wasn't a lot. I mean, it entailed meeting with the commissioner once or twice a year to discuss any issues the writers had with access, with dealing with things. And we get our annual meetings, the Super Bowl, and fielding a lot of complaints from guys who would call up and say, well, so-and-so won't talk to me. Well, that's life. Get over it. It was it involved just sort of keeping an eye and trying to get along with people.
That's good. You're kind of the shepherd of the herd.
Pardon?
You were almost like the shepherd of the herd. You were just shepherding them along.
Yeah. It was just make sure everybody behaves, and we had certain rules teams and players were supposed to follow, and trying to keep an eye and make sure they did.
I kind of want to talk a little bit about what actually made the team so good, if you don't mind. I did read online that you wrote, once again, you can't trust everything you read online, but you wrote that several former 49ers assistants credited Bob McKittrick as a hidden factor behind their dominance. And I read this one quote in a book that I liked. It went like this. It was Phil Barber from We Were Champions, if you know that book. He said, Joe Montana, Ronnie Lott, Jerry Rice, Steve Young, all were counted among the 100 greatest players in league history. But you can't have a 14-year run of dominance without that kind of star power. For every Montana, there is Tom Rathman nailing blitzes and catching short passes in a pinch. For every Lott, there is Dan Buns coming up with tackles that help to turn a Super Bowl. The role players are recalled fondly and gratefully in San Francisco. So I would say in the same vein, for every Bill Walsh, there's a Bob McKittrick. Who was Bob McKittrick, and what made him so special in your eyes?
Bob McKittrick was the offensive line coach, and there was nobody on the staff that Bill Walsh respected more than Bob McKittrick, although he was in many ways so totally different from Bill. But Bob believed in a certain, you know, he did not. He believed in a certain type of player, smallish offensive lineman, athletic offensive lineman, not the big hulking 350 pounds. The 49ers had one of the smallest lines in the league, but they could run. They were athletic. They could move, and he molded them. And he had a theory on how you do it, and it was different from what the game is now, because you don't see the lightweight lines anymore. But even then, he was the smallest or one of the lightest lines in the league, and Bob knew how to get what he needed to get out of them. And Bill and nobody, there was nobody in his staff that Bill respected more than Bob McKittrick, unquestionably.
And they sort of clashed a little bit too, right? I think am I right in saying McKittrick, he was pretty blunt. He kind of just said what he thought. Probably Bill didn't like that sometimes.
I would say that is 100% accurate. Yeah. Bob didn't. Bob wasn't one to. Bob was a Marine. He wasn't one to mince words, hide his feeling. He was funny when talking about. I'll never forget. Bill was having some marriage issues, and they had to have. He went to counseling. I believe it was on Friday morning or Friday afternoon, and it played with their practice schedule, and Bob was not bashful in complaining about it. but there's nobody in coaching, I think, that at least on his staff, that Walsh respected more than McKittrick. Even
more so than George Seifert, who he eventually chose to replace him.
Yes, even more than George.
That's pretty cool. So you, in that little quote that I read about that you wrote, you said McKittrick was the hidden factor. I want to try tease out a couple more hidden factors that you might think kind of contributed to the dominance. So I did identify a few that I talked about in previous episodes that I released. I identified 5. I wonder if any of these sort of come to mind for you. Let's just talk about a couple. So one that kind of jumped out to me was especially Walsh, but really the whole organization's paying attention to the little tiny details, of very close attention. Like I gave the example of Walsh's little red book that he wrote up, and his tiny rules that he would put into place around don't sit down on the practice field. Do you feel like that was one of the reasons behind, there's such dominance, just that attention to detail?
Well, the attention to detail, absolutely. Bill, players used to bitch that sometimes practices ran too long, or he'd want to do things over, or make last-minute changes on Saturday before the game on Sunday. But Bill was always looking for that little edge, and the attention to detail is one of the things that he would have. I mean, he didn't let a lot go by without noticing.
I guess that sort of bleeds over into the West Coast offense. Well, Bill Walsh offense, of course, and also his scripting obsession. That's one thing I talked about quite a bit. His obsession with writing down, hundreds of plays or 50 to 80 plays, and then basically just doing that. And that's what he did. That's attention to detail right there, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I don't know how many teams were scripting plays the way he was in those days. I think everybody probably does it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he paid attention. He paid attention to the little things. And he paid attention to the big things too, but he was not much escaped him.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's such an important point to remember for, anyone that's trying to build or anyone that's on like a high performing team. You have to pay attention to those little things, because the little things add up to much bigger things.
Well, yeah, that's it. You take care of the little things, and the big things will take care of themselves.
Yeah,
Little thing. You don't want the little things to roll into big things.
yeah, exactly. Well, another one I talked about, another sort of factor behind all the winning was Bill Walsh's ability to identify talent, that diamond in the rough. I talked about the Dwight Clark story, about how he was never, no one was going to draft him, but then
Correct.
Bill went out there and sort of found him. Do you think that was a really important factor, the talent identification?
He was very good at identifying players, but a lot of people can do that. I think one of the things that set Bill apart wasn't so much finding the players, but knowing when it was time to cut the cord with them.
Yes.
That's the mistake a lot of coaches, a lot of teams make. They hold up players too long. Bill was one of those, and there have been a few through the years, who always believed getting rid of players a year early rather than a year late.
Yeah.
He kept, I guess the word would be renewing the team. He kept bringing in new blood, revitalize, make them new again, and didn't hang on to guys past their due date.
Yeah. I think he picked that up when he was with the Bengals, I believe. I read something about that.
Yeah, and he, players didn't like it, of course.
Yeah.
Players always think they get another year left. But not with Bill. He's very good at telling him it's time to think about your life's work.
Well, I have a couple of others here that we can talk about as well, but I wonder if there's any sort of big themes or any sort of factors that jump out to you that we haven't talked about yet that you sort of think played a part, but maybe we're a little more behind the scenes. They weren't talked about too much, they weren't written about too much, but obviously you were basically an insider, so you would know.
Well, he had people around him. He was not afraid to bring in good people to work around him, to work with him. John McVay handling the front office.
Yep.
Did a wonderful job in making sure things ran smoothly, keeping an eye on players that might be available. Scouting department was well run, but he not much escaped his notice. He could seem to you at times to be the absent-minded professor and forget things, but he knew what was going on in that organization, and he knew what was going on in the locker room. He was very good at keeping his finger on the pulse of the team, so the things didn't get out of sort. I mean, when the players went on strike in 1982, granted, there was a little bit of skullduggery and paying players when they were staying away and things like that. But he was very good at keeping his finger on the pulse of the team. He knew nothing escaped him. He knew what was going on.
Well, you just mentioned paying players there, and I don't think we should end this conversation without talking about Mr. DeBartolo Jr. How important of a factor do you think he was? Before I touched on the 49ers, I spent quite a few months talking about John Wooden's team at UCLA and some of the boosters there that perhaps had a bit of a pull, an extra pull other than the basketball. But obviously DeBartolo Jr. was on a different level to college boosters. How important was he?
Well, bottom line is he would tell Bill, whatever you want, I'll get it. Whatever you want to do, whatever you need, whatever, I'll get it. The only thing I want you to do is win.
Yeah.
He didn't care what he spent, what he did, how he did it. The only trade-off was, you want this, you want that, you want what? Fine, win. That was all Eddie ever cared about.
It's
there was not a lot of hidden meaning there.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing to have an owner or a boss just say, you do whatever you want, just win. I don't care whatever else you do.
Yeah, that was real simple instructions. And I mean, not that Eddie didn't have problems with Bill. I mean, it was after the meltdown at the end of the '82 season when Bill was going to retire, and they brought in some help for him, and Eddie kept him around, and things worked out. And eventually, eventually their relationship broke down in '88, and Bill agreed to step down after that year, and then they won the Super Bowl. Yeah. And he stepped down, but he later regretted it and said, "Yeah, they stole my team from me." So he said, but no, DeBartolo gave him everything he wanted, everything he needed. They were never wanting for anything.
Mm. Do you think it was the right time for him to step down? From what I read, I mean, he was exhausted. Both
he was an emotional wreck. Yeah. Yeah, it was time. You know, what might have happened if he hadn't stepped down, who knows? But I think it was time.
Mm.
Everybody needed a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Well, another sort of factor or theme that I've thought about. I didn't read or write or talk about this earlier. But it's sort of this sense, and you correct me if you tell me if this is a dumb idea, but this sort of sense that the 49ers were kind of like outsiders. There's these West Coast hippies, the other teams, the media, the other fans would label them as, cheese eating, wine drinking hippies. What do you?
Yeah,
is that true?
That was kind of the impression that people would have. When people thought of San Francisco, that's what they thought of. And they didn't think when you talk about football, you talk about tough. You're talking New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, that kind of thing. And they did not have that reputation at all. But they were a very tough team. They were a physically tough team. They just never had that reputation. And I think it was partly a geographical thing. People thought of the West Coast in a different light than the East Coast and the Midwest.
Yeah. Was that like extra motivation to the players? Do you think that helped them? I know Bill sometimes talked to the team and gave them motivational speeches. Maybe he talked about this. Sometimes he definitely didn't, and he just kind of said, "Get out there and do your job." Do you think it helped the players?
Well, yeah. I mean, Walsh certainly made a point of using it. They were not being respected. They were looked down upon. Cheese eating, quiche eating, all that stuff. But I can't say that was a major a factor. It was just with an image people had of the West Coast at that time.
Well, we can't finish without talking about the quarterback situation. Well, the quarterbacks just in general. Where does Joe Montana rank in your mind, and why is he the number one over Brady?
I don't know if he is or was. When he was playing and in the immediate aftermath, you think he was, but the game, it's so hard to compare.
Yeah.
Montana with Brady and Mahomes, because the game has changed. The rules are different. Passing was predominant then, but now it really is. It's just a little different game, and it's hard to. The rules have changed. It's so hard to compare eras. I mean, Montana was certainly number one in his time, and it's hard to argue. People might argue Marino. Well, Marino didn't win any championships. Dan Fouts didn't win any championships. But the rules have made such a difference. I mean, as much of a passing game as it was then, it's more so now. So quarterbacks are doing more, but they also have the benefit of receivers who you can't touch once they get past the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
They can run in unimpeded. You can throw the ball to them. So I think it's probably true in all sports, but particularly in football, it's really difficult to compare players from different eras.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big soccer fan, and there's this age-old debate between Pele or Messi, and yeah, like you said, the game is so different than they used to get kicked to pieces back then, and now he's so protected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, is there any sort of other hidden factors that you want to talk about, or anything that you think's worth bringing up as to why they were so dominant over this 2015 10-year period?
No, I think we've pretty well covered. It was interesting because they were a dominant team in the NFC at a time when the NFC was dominant.
Yeah.
So I forget what the number was. The NFC teams won a dozen straight Super Bowls, or 14 or 10. I can't remember what the number was. But the Giants were pretty good. The Cowboys were good. The Redskins with Joe Gibbs. They were tested every year, and they knew they were going to be, and they were prepared for it.
Yeah, that makes it even more impressive that they kept winning. Yeah.
Yeah, they won in an era when it was difficult to win because there was very, very strong competition.
That's what you want to be doing as the best team in the league or the world. You want to be testing yourself against the other best teams.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Ira. I really appreciate you chatting with me today. Is there anything else you want to touch on, or anything that, I don't know, any stories that are great to tell about Walsh or the team?
Well, we talked about Walsh's eye for talent and Walsh's ability to control the team. But one of the things I haven't mentioned, probably should, is Walsh also had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the great tales about Bill was that first Super Bowl when he got there ahead of the team and put on a bellman's uniform.
Yeah.
And was wrestling with players almost to take the bags away and carry them before anybody realized who he was. I mean, Bill was pretty good at keeping things light. And going even on the bus to the first Super Bowl when they ran into all that traffic in Detroit. And he got on the PA system on the bus and was saying the game has started and Freddie Solomon has just done this and this and that. I mean, Bill was pretty good at keeping his finger on what was going on and what they needed.
Yeah, that sense of humor is just such an undervalued trait in leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just the game is not just X's and O's. You're leading people, and that's what sometimes coaches forget. You have all the X's and O's on a piece of paper, but you've also got to lead people.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to chat, and
my pleasure.
Yeah, all the best, and we'll speak soon. Thanks, Ira.
Okay, take care. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Incredible Teams. Before I go, a massive thank you to Mr. Ira Miller again. I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback on the episode. Please comment or message me. Subscribe if you like what you heard, and help me pick out who to cover next. If you did like it, I would love if you could tell a friend about it, and that's the way that the algorithms love to grow. See you on the next episode. Thanks.